Good morning. It's Morning Oasis. I was going to plug in my headset. However, I figured out where the bunny got a plug yesterday. My God, she freaking loves these kinds of cords. These are like crack to her. Seriously, she will go anywhere to any length to get these. It's really a pain in the ass. Well, so I hope you guys can hear me today because, I don't have a headset to put on. I'm just shocked. She's so naughty. So naughty. Okay, good morning. It's Morning Oasis. It's February. It's April 20th. It's so funny. So this morning my son comes down and he says, "Hey Mom, did you know it's 4:20?" And I'm like, what does that mean to you? How do you know about 4:20? And he goes, well, everybody knows about it. And so my son, he's definitely launched into the adult world. Let me tell you. Oh my goodness. I had to kind of just be real with him. I was like, yeah, I used to celebrate 420, but not this year. First time in, oh my gosh, like 25 years that I didn't celebrate 420. So anyway, happy 420, all of those who are celebrating it. I think it's hilarious that we've taken a police code and turned it into a holiday, but whatever. So today I do not have any card pulls yet. So anyone who would like one, go ahead and let me know. I'm curious to hear from you guys. How was yesterday's meditation for you? Good morning, Elizabeth. How did it feel? Did you find yourself thinking more about time? Did you find yourself playing with time? Sure, Elizabeth. Were you, where did I put my pen? There it is. Were you noticing time passing, or were you letting go of time more? It kind of reminded me also, I was thinking about it, Tiffany Stiles, who I love her work and share her stuff a lot. She talked a bit about how right now, and this has actually been happening for me at least over the last couple of years, and I've always had a hard time with time. Sure, Andrea. All right, so we've got one more slot left. That people are having a harder and harder time tracking time. So knowing what time it is, knowing where they're at in the time of day. Hi, George. Good to see you here. So she said that, people are having to live more setting alarms for things, all that stuff. Hold on. Jesse says, I did play with the time stretch game on the way to work just for fun. Squeezed out maybe another 2 or 3 minutes. Perfect. That's awesome. Great. That's how we get into a better and better familiarity and rhythm with it. Hello, Crow. So anyway, she talked about how this is going to be happening more for the collective, that they're going to have a harder time tracking with time. Good, Karen. That's awesome. And that, it's just how it progresses is this kind of letting go of time. Now, personally, I live by alarms. I have to. It's the only way I can show up for an appointment on time. It's the only way I can remember even what day it is. I tend to wake up around my alarm. Sometimes I don't wake up until it actually goes off. Sometimes I wake up before it and I still lay there and just kind of meditate until the alarm goes off. But that's the only way I know it's time to get up and get out of bed. I do not have this internal clock, really. Not just time, but memory of time. Exactly, Sandy, exactly. Hello, Sandy. It's a complete disconnect from time that's going on. And that's going to become more and more progressive for people. So it's not that if you have a partner or spouse who is rigid about time, like I do. My husband's an engineer, so everything is calculated and quantified, and that dude knows what time it is at all points of the day. It blows my mind at how well he can track time, and he doesn't even have a clock to watch. He just has this inherent sense of it. So he's the opposite of me in that, and he kind of gets a little frustrated with me about my total lack of time. So when I have things scheduled with him, I try to be really respectful of where he's at, and I set an alarm. Andrea says, I actually been playing with time for a bit. For the past few months, I played with it yesterday when I was running late and just relaxed and ended up making it on time. You always have to set alarms. Exactly, Andrea. So that kind of reminds me of, and I think I may have told this story, but it was a really long time ago, so I'm going to share it again, and I'll share it kind of quick. With my son, he used to, when he was younger, be super, super anxious if I was late to pick him up from things, and I hated to do that to him. I just didn't even want to put him in that space of having to feel that anxiety about being late. So I was supposed to, it takes me 8 minutes on a good traffic day to get from my house to his gym where he studies MMA. And I was late. I was really late. I was supposed to be there at 6, and I was leaving my house at 5:58. Really late. And so, I got in my car and I was really anxious and stressed and just like, and everything got in my way. Hi, Chris. Nice to see you. And so every little step of the way, something got in the way. Oh, George, I would be happy to do your poll, George. Okay, so as I'm driving, like somebody walked in front of my car. There was like 4 pedestrians crossing in all the different angles, and cars waiting for them to pass, to cross in order to go and do their turns. And I'm sitting there and I just watch the minute tick by, and it's like, it's 5:59, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm going to be so late to get him. And I'm thinking, if it's trafficy like this here, it's going to be more on the road, actual road. So I'm getting angry. I was getting angry and frustrated, and it's like the time speeded up, but my motion slowed down. And so I realized as soon as I, got through that first intersection, and at the next intersection, it looked like it would be clear. And then all these cars pulled out, and once again, 4-way, all people crossing, cars in the way. And I just was like, okay, I need to just calm down. I need to let go of what time I get there and just allow that I'm going to get there when I get there. And I had to really come into myself, and I saw I had time to sit there for a second. So I just closed my eyes. I did the same exercise that we did yesterday, and I came into myself, and I had plenty of time to do it. And I brought my attention in and my focus, and just really pulled my energy in and allowed myself to be free of this concept of time. And as I did so, I opened up my eyes and everything cleared out. All the cars pulled forward. The people had finished crossing. I didn't even look at the clock to see what time it was. And I just started to drive. And I could feel this like kind of pulsing wave ahead of me as I was going. And when I pulled up in front of his gym, it was 6:02. So it took me 5 minutes total from leaving my house, even with all those blockages, to get there. So I had really stretched out this time, and I was like, oh my God, that was so cool. And I felt great. So when he got in the car and I'm like, sorry, I'm a few minutes late, he's like, it's okay, Mom. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't anxious. He didn't have to get into me being anxious. He wasn't anxious. He wasn't stressed. So it was this whole different way of approaching, and I realized I need to play with time a lot more. Rainey says, hi, honey, watching you from my son's hospital room. Oh my gosh, time really slows down when you're in the hospital. With little contact to the outside world, the sun, etc. 2.5 days feels like a week. Oh, I can feel you on that, sister. Let me say, My husband was in the hospital for meningitis for, let's see, he was in ICU for a week, and then in the regular hospital for a week, and then had to have brain surgery, so we were in for another 2 weeks. That was the longest 3 months of my life, honestly. That time span. So I'm so sorry to hear that he's in there. I'm going to send you guys some love. I have no idea why he's in there, but that's rough. That's rough. So I'm going to jump into card pulls. I love that you guys are playing with time. We're going to talk a little bit more about time today. And we're going to talk about it from some other concepts. Let's see. First, we've got Elizabeth. Oh, interesting. So the Galactic Heritage cards want to come out today. I don't know that they're going to be for everybody. We'll see. We'll see how it progresses. Wait. Yeah, time is one of those things that it's kind of like, what does Einstein say? That time and space really should be considered one, the time-space continuum, right? That we can't really disconnect the two things, and that as we travel through space, we travel through time. And the faster we're traveling through space, the faster we're traveling through time. And the slower we're traveling through space, the slower we're traveling through time. So they're very relational, our space and time. So when you're sitting in a room, not moving, not going anywhere, yeah, that really slows time down. Okay, so Elizabeth, you got card number 11, Pioneering Spirit. Let's see what it has to say. Here's the card. Jesse says, well, you run and you run to catch up with the sun, but it's sinking, racing around to come up behind you again. Yes, exactly. Oh, I love that movie, Interstellar. It's a great movie, Jesse, great movie. And love that you're quoting Pink Floyd. Okay, so Lyra, Pioneering Spirit Past. The early beginnings of Lyran civilization, we're getting a lot of cues about Lyrans, and these are kind of like the feline beings, and all of us stem from Lyra. Lyra, at some point, all of us lived a life in the Lyran civilization. It's one of our ancestral civilizations. Andrea says, I find playing with time when I'm driving helps keep me relaxed and is so cool when traffic clears so you can turn. I agree, Andrea. I agree 100% with that. That's one of my favorite things to do. Okay, they expanded their colonies rapidly and their civilization grew quickly. These were the first forefathers of human heritage. Having a connection to this early Lyran time, you also have a connection to this pioneering spirit. This spirit compels you to explore both the physical and the metaphysical worlds. While this is a healthy pursuit, the lessons of the Lyrans have shown that this desire for exploration must also be balanced with your daily life. It asks that your explorations be a way to embrace physical life and not to escape from it. The text for this card pretty much says it all. It refers to the beginnings of the first star family directly related to our development on Earth, the Lyrans. It particularly refers to the first era of their development when they were young species and had many lessons to learn. The Lyrans are our oldest forefathers. In this past era, they were very externally focused in reality and not interested in spiritual development. In some ways, they were young and immature, but as most young species are, like that. Their qualities of young civilizations can be negative or positive depending on how those qualities are expressed. A pioneering spirit can be a wonderful quality when it's used responsibly and with integrity. It can also be a negative quality when used immaturely, with ignorance, or without integrity. Thus, it becomes important to look at the rest of what's going on around you in order to follow your intuition more clearly. Using this card comes up, usually this card comes up for people who have lives in Lyra during this era and are here now to apply those lessons. Perhaps you're being asked to take risks and become a spiritual pioneer in your life a little bit more. Or perhaps the pioneering aspect of your nature needs to be balanced with the responsibilities in your life on earth as a human. Once you open yourself to further guidance from this message, you'll see where the insight takes you. So one of the things that's popping for me is I think that right now, as you've been, and this is kind of what we're going to be talking about today, as you've been exploring your concepts of other lifetimes, of other expressions, trying to see what else is impacting you in this lifetime, you're bringing that stuff in more strongly into this lifetime, and that's impacting your daily life. And I'm hearing really strongly as a cue from this that it's time to really start seeing and distinguishing between the past and the present, right? We're going to talk about this past and present and future context in a little bit. So really starting to recognize where you are now, being present now, not present in these other lifetimes where you were learning these lessons, but bringing those lessons into the now, into this lifetime as well. So that's what came through for you, Elizabeth. And Andrea, let's see. Nope. The energy deck wants to talk with you, Andrea. And remember, you guys, we're all a collective. So if this is coming up for one of us, it's kind of a reminder for a lot of us. I would say all, but we are still individuations. Okay, let's see, Andrea. This is the Energy Oracle deck. Oh, yes. So the Galactic Heritage deck, by the way, you guys, is by Lisa Royal Holt. Illustrations by David Cow. And the Energy Oracle Guide, this one's by Sandra Ann Taylor. That's what that looks like. Good, Elizabeth, good. What it reminds me of, what just popped into my mind, Elizabeth, is with my own husband, one of the things I found out, and this was super freeing, was that my husband and I have played out 3 main roles in our various lives together. And one of them was I was his slave, right? His servant. And that actually played out in multiple different ways. At one point, I was literally a slave owned by his family. At another point, I was his servant that was employed by his family, by him. And each time we ended up falling in love, but he always had a power and control dynamic over me. And so in this lifetime, and then there were times where he was my father. Then there were times where I was his mother. And I wasn't a very nice mother to him. He wasn't a very nice father to me. It was always about control, power over, power under dynamics. And so in this life, as soon as I figured that out, and I actually figured it out because somebody read it for me, a really interesting palm reader woman brought it to my attention, and another woman confirmed it, and then I started having dreams and remembering these lives where I was these things with him. And so in this life, whenever I'd start to feel him in that power dynamic, I would say, I am not your slave. I'm not your servant. I'm not your child. I am your wife, right? And for myself, he would say, you're not my mother. Don't talk to me like that. And it was bringing that into the present, right? Bringing it into, what is our present relationship? Oh, we're equals. We're equals and we're married. We're on the same level here. So that is a way that knowing what the past was, what these other lifetimes together relationships and dynamics are, can change and impact the current relationship. Okay, so Andrea, this is not going to surprise you at all, Andrea. I'm just going to look it up real quick because it's easier to do with both hands. So you got card number 17, action, energizing effort, willingness to work. This card tells you that now is the time for more aggressive forward movement The galloping horses represent intentional and concerted action directed to your goals. This one is so totally for me as well. I'm just going to throw that out there. This card upright indicates that you are on the right track. Your determined efforts must increase. The white horse is inner action of spirit and thought, and the black is the outer work that still needs to be done. So continue taking action and trust your intuition. In time, you'll break through and see the results that you've been working so hard to create. Time to just get up and go. Get some giddy up, some gallop on, and move forward. This is a great time to do that. I myself am in the middle of that. You guys, I am building some of the coolest stuff for you guys. You're not even going to believe it. I'm building a book called The Chakra Growth Chart that's going to show you guys how, as you grow and develop, how your chakras grow and develop, and create a little worksheets for you guys to be able to start looking at and seeing these patterns in your lives and how they impact you. I'm building a Fractured States Oracle deck. I'm so excited about that. I think it's going to be amazing. We just finished putting the final touches on the chakra workshop. So it's got music, it's broken into tracks, it's got a PDF presentation. I'm so excited, you guys. In the next 2 or 3 days, you're going to see how you can get your hands on that stuff. Super excited. So right now is a huge action taking, building time. What are your ideas, Andrea? What are you thinking of? How do you want to start taking action on those things? And just do it. Just get up and do it. Okay? All right. So there's that one. And George, next for you. Let's see which deck wants to talk to you, George. Oh, also the Galactic Heritage deck wants to speak with you, George. Let's see what it has to tell you. Giving you guys both a little bit of heritage interest information. Oh, this isn't too surprising either. And it usually isn't with these card pulls. Let's just be real. Okay, so your card is Cosmic Midwifery, actually. It's number 8 in the deck. And it's the Arcturian's parallel. I know that probably makes no sense right now to you, but we'll read and you can hear. So, all civilization needs guides, seen and unseen, that help them grow. The Arcturus energy has guided humanity from a place of compassion and unconditional love since its inception. It plays the role of a cosmic midwife, assisting us through birth and death and in the physical reality. This energy also helps us through major life transitions. You've pulled this card because you have a connection to the Arcturus energy, and in this life, either in this life or another. This energy is working with you again to reconnect, visualize a bright orange star, and breathe in its energy directly into your heart. As we stated above, the Arcturus energy has a profound and all-pervasive relationship with human reality. One of the services it provides has to do with the two most sacred life transitions, birth and death. The Arcturus energy, which energetically resonates as the energy of our higher selves or our integrated essence, serves as a midwife for us when we're born and when we pass from this physical world. You could say that the white light seen in a near-death experience and during birth, if we could remember, is the energy of Arcturus, our pure essence. This does not mean that the star, Arcturus, or something to do with extraterrestrials. This is a pure archetypal resonance that is equated with the star Arcturus in the cosmology given by Germain. This energy can be felt by focusing on the star Arcturus in meditation, but the consciousness is so much more expansive than simply a star. And this card comes up in your, if this card comes up in your reading, it could point to many things depending upon your unique qualities and life lessons. It may mean that you have a gift to usher others through a birthing or a death experience. It could also mean that you're going through a metaphorical birth or death experience and could benefit by invoking that Arcturian consciousness to assist you. What I'm hearing about this one, George, for you, is you kind of have this natural desire and draw to help people transition through things, to help people progress through things. And I think you come in at points in people's lives when they're ready for those transitions. Now, knowing what you do for a living and knowing where you are at in your relationship, I'm guessing that they're asking you guys both to call in this energy via you specifically, because you're more attuned to this frequency, to call that energy and to help you both birth into a new life, birth into this new experience. Really release, because death is about releasing the old expression and coming into the new expression. So allow that energy to help guide you guys in this new formation of your relationship. That's what I'm feeling is a strong ping for this card as it flies out of my hands. So remember, you're being supported in this. And even if it's that you yourself are bringing in this frequency or this frequency is coming to support you, does not matter. It's there to help you. Allow it to midwife you guys through into your next phase. And you particularly, George, as well. All right, so those are card pulls for today. Let me put my cards away so that I don't spill them everywhere. All right, let's see. What did Jessie say? Does anyone else exercise their intuition by knowing or trying to see which deck I'm going to go, Jessie, I'm going to go for before she says anything? If not, great chance to improve those skills. That's an excellent, excellent suggestion, Jessie. He's just full of good ideas. I love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you. And what else do you guys do for your exercising your intuition? Giving each other ideas like that is so helpful. You guys can post things like that and ideas like that in the group as well. I think it's a great way to bring things in. You're welcome. You're welcome, darling. Okay, so we were talking more about time, and I think we're going to talk about time for the rest of the week. So today, talking about time, yesterday we just kind of really looked at what is time, right? We looked at how is it impacting us, and we kind of just talked about it in general, and really started to look at what would it look like to not experience time. Our meditation that we ended up being guided through put us in time, had us play with controlling the rate of time, and then stepping out of time and observing that progression. So I'm wondering how you guys did with that part. Did anybody experience that yesterday? Were they able to stay in that observer state while they were going through? I talked about that yesterday, Sandy. I actually, when I'm going to be going somewhere, I ask for a convenient, safe, good parking spot, and it always works. Yes, it does. Now, sometimes when I'm not paying attention, I don't notice the spot, especially if the spot is a little bit before the place, like right before, and then I'll be like, oh, damn it, I missed it. And I'll have to go back around. And sometimes it won't be available for me after that. So that also is a lesson to stay present and aware and focused even before you think you're supposed to. Great suggestion. Yes, so yesterday I kind of told a story all about that. So time, one of the other aspects about time is alternate timelines. And we kind of touched on that yesterday. That was how we got started on the subject. We all have these alternate timelines, and there's points in our timeline as we're going through where we get this feeling of like deja vu, like, oh, I've been here before. I've already done this. I've already experienced this. I already know what's going on. Now, we could talk about, say that deja vu is just one of those brain glitches, which is what the psychology field says. Or we could think about it, what if we already have been through this time? What if we already did this once before and now we're being given an opportunity to do it just a little bit different? When I get a deja vu period or moment, I pause and I look around and I'm like, what's my first instinct in this moment? Because my first instinct I probably did the last time. And then I think, what would be my next instinct? What would be my next impulse to do? And I pause and then just allow myself to feel out, what would that be like? And sometimes my compass says, yes, that's the one you're supposed to do now. So it's not always that first instinct that we're supposed to do. Sometimes our first instinct is our auto-programming and our autopilot mechanisms. And we're operating through our filter system that says, do that. And if we pause, step out of time, and look at this again and go, what else could I do right now? Giving ourselves lots of time to contemplate these things, because the truth is there's an infinite amount of time, right? There's very few situations in our lives that we must actually make a decision or a choice right at that moment. And when we feel that pressure, that's the best time to pause, to not make a choice or decision, to remove ourselves from the situation for a moment, even if it's just mentally, to remove ourselves from that moment, come into the self fully, come fully present, and then reevaluate. Because the only time that we have to make a life or death choice in that instant is if it's literally life and death. Like just what you just said. At least three, and Jessie says, I have at least 3 instances in which I've avoided a very nasty traffic accident by knowing just a half a second or so before just what another driver was about to do. Intuition or a timeline thingy. So I would offer that that's guidance. That's divine intervention. That's somebody coming in and going, pay attention. Look. Pay attention to what's happening around you. It also can be, because let's think of it in the unity context, yourself coming in and going, hey, in another time this happened, pause, or whatever it is that you need to do. So there's a lot of different things that could be. What I'm feeling for you, Jessie, is divine intervention. So sometimes it is an angelic intervention, yes. I actually have been in car accidents where they were totally my fault, rolling a car 5 times up a hill where something pulled me out of my seat and my friend that was with me and put us both in the footwell of the passenger side of the car, where we were perfectly fine. The police officer who came on site was like, okay, where are the dead bodies? Where did you guys put them? We're like, well, where are the bodies? But we're not dead. They didn't believe it at all that people could have survived that car accident. So sometimes, yes, it is definitely a divine intervention and angelic intervention. What are angels, though? They're a division from the creation. They're an archetypal division. They're that original separation from source, right? So we all stem from them. We all are going to be influenced and guided by them. Again, in the unity context, they're ourselves at our wholest state, right? So there's billions of us on this planet. Maybe 1 billion of us come from one of those archangels. So that's a lot of us, and we stem from that archetypal energy. And so that archetype will be watching over and helping us when it can, when we invite it to. Because remember, there's always free will. So alternative timelines. We can jump between these alternative timelines as we become more and more conscious of them, more and more aware that there's a possibility that it's true, that it exists. And we break that disbelief or that vow and agreement to disbelieve and stay in a singular timeline. We're really not in a singular timeline. As you start to open up and expand in this, you'll find that to be true. But what about past lives, right? What about other lifetimes? They're not in relationship to this one, where I'm not Jessie, I'm somebody else. how does that impact us in this time, right? In this lifetime? We all hear about that. We hear about past life regression therapy. We hear about breaking the past life vows and breaking those agreements that we make in those past lives. So here's how I view it. And this is why I've mentioned this before, strand theory. That's where it kind of comes from, actually, is trying to unravel all of this and understand what's happening to me personally. So for me, when I first woke, excuse me, see, I'm shifting my energy. When I first started to awaken working with my teacher, and I know I say that a lot, but it's kind of a process, right? I was working with my teacher that year. So much happened during that first year of training. But one of the things that happened was we explored one of my past lives. And that was a past life where I was a priest in a Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox church. And I know that I came in that time, in that place, in that role, because my goal was to teach people that they didn't need the church in order to access God. They did not have to go through priests. They did not have to go through this opulent church and give everything that they had to these priests and support them in a kingly-like fashion while these people were starving and dying. So as soon as I got enough in my ministry to be able to speak at a pulpit, that's what I was sharing. And of course, as I'm surrounded by priests that are in their opulence, they did not like what I was doing. So I was punished. My life, I went through retraining, reprogramming. It was not a pretty process. And I ended up becoming very resentful and having deep and deeper and deeper great anger and resentment of the church. And it got to the point where eventually they just imprisoned me and left me to die. And because other people felt sorry for me, they helped me, and I lived for way too long in this dungeon. And in that process, I made vows and agreements. I will never do this again. I will never support the church. I will never speak the truth out on a stage again. I will never blah, 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 right? So I made all these vows and oaths and in rage and anger and resentment. I also was like, I'll never birth back in this system again. So I had to break those vows, right? I had to break those agreements, and I had to heal that life because it was impacting me in this life. And how was it impacting me? I hated Christianity. At that point in my life, up until that point, it was an instant trigger. If I knew that you practiced Christianity, I was rejecting of you completely, rejected any teachings, but I felt this strong pull to Jesus and to learn more about Jesus and to understand him and to know the Bible. But I hated anyone who wanted to teach it to me. And it was really difficult. I was not nice about it. I used to call myself a Christian bigot. And it was true. I was. So all of that was in relationship to this past life. And as soon as we healed that past life, that all went away. And suddenly, not only was I able to start studying Christianity and really understand the beauty of the messages in that religion, but I was able to study Islam. I was able to start looking into Judaism. These Abrahamic religions that had once been completely denied to me because of my own past life experience were suddenly opening up. And I was seeing all the similarities and the threads of brotherhood between these religions. So our past lives can impact us. They impact us because there's no such thing as time. And it's really like, here's one strand, this Jesse life. Here's one strand, this priest life. And they were clumped together like cooked spaghetti, right? That didn't get stirred well enough. Because they're clumped together, there's a paired lesson that's going on in these lifetimes. A pairing of these lessons. And they had to be able to work together in order for me to really learn tolerance, really learn brotherhood, really learn how we can carry a message through without our anger, without our resentment, without our fear. And many other lessons came from that, which I'll spare you guys. So that's how past lives, I don't view them as past lives. I view them as parallel lives. They're all happening at once. And sometimes we have them all clumped together in this giant cluster. Sometimes it's like 10 different lives, like with my husband and I. We had many different lives clumped together to learn servitude, control, dominance, power over, power under, service to others, service to self, servitude, enslavement, right? So all of these lessons were clumped together. And as I started to kind of see the individualities of these lessons, cleansing and releasing the anger, the pain, the frustration, the feelings of powerlessness, and instead looking at, oh wow, even in those dynamics, we still found love, right? So all of these things are happening at once, and we're learning and playing them out all at once. Jesse mentioned a movie, Interstellar, and there's a part in that movie where he drops into a tesseract, and he's actually inside of his library where and seeing all the different times his daughter comes in, all these different times, and depending upon, hi Elaine, hi, depending upon where he looks through and at what point is the time and the space of the interaction. Now imagine that to be true for all different lives. Your consciousness can slip out of this one and look into all these different lives. But you have to believe that that's true. And we start playing with it by playing with time, by playing with space, by playing with the concept of, can I actually view this other time and space over here? Can I view this time and space over here? And then, right? Can I look forward and see, how will my drive be? Is it going to be trafficky? Is it going to be clear? Can I change that with intention? Is it up to me to change that? What's playing along those timelines? So this is kind of that whole play with time. I'm going to look back. I know people have been talking, and I'll see what's been going on here. Okay, car accidents. Hello, Elaine. Okay, having this inner knowledge when I do something, and then stepping back and saying, did I know how to do that or say that? Well, Sandy, at some point you did. And you're just connecting into that time, right? Because what if the truth is, as a unity consciousness, and this is another little play with that, right? So if we're one being, some people believe that it's like a video game, that the whole experience, all of creation, all the different lifetimes, all the different beings, all of it is a video game. And you, the player, are coming back and replaying the video game as this now character. Now you're taking on this character. Oh, I died? Damn, I'm going to go try it again as this lifetime, as this other character. I'm going to replay the game. Oh, now I'm going to play the game from this lifetime. And as you progress through the game play outside of time, as you over time, you will eventually play all the characters and all the roles, and they're all you. But when you drop into that role-playing game, you can't drop in as who you are now. You have to actually embody who you are becoming. So in that way of looking at things around time, it's timeless, because you're dropping in at different lifetimes. You may be dropping in the 1700s. You may be dropping in BC time. You may be dropping in the 5000s, right? So you may be dropping in at different points, whatever. But you can't hold all of that in this monkey brain, right? So your higher self is the one who has all of that information. The more we spend connecting to our higher selves outside of this vessel, outside of this timeline, connecting into that highest of self, the infinite consciousness, the more we can start seeing these played out lines, these different times. So of course you knew that. Jesse says, read all of those to get a deeper understanding, but what I got to the Book of Mormon, I just couldn't do it, but I tried. Well, the Book of Mormon, I may step on some toes here, but the Book of Mormon is is a combination of channeled messages and blasphemy, right? Like blasphemy being somebody saying they're channeling something, and it's actually their own ego filters, their own sense of self. And it was really changed quite a bit from his original channelings. So, when I tune into the Book of Mormon, or I have many friends who are Mormons, what I get is heavy filtration. I get the same thing like when I'm reading the Quran, for instance. I actually love reading the Quran. It's one of my favorite of the religious texts to read. But when I'm reading it, it's really clear, oh, this is the human filter. Oh, this is the filter in place in order to make this relatable to the tribal culture at the time, right? Because we have to have our messages come through within context of the culture, of the time period, of the awareness of the people who are receiving the message. And this is why you'll get different messages from various channels, right? Each message will change and be a little bit different depending on who's channeling it, who their audience is, and what the channel is for. So the Bible as well is one. Like that was for a time period. That was for a specific point in time. That was a point in time where people were trying to separate from the Hebrewic religion and recognizing that that they needed to evolve it. Right? So Judaism, when it first came through, and as it first came in, it was necessary to show in a transition from the pre-Judaic culture, which was the Egyptian religion. So that Egyptian period came from the Atlantean period. The Atlantean period came from the Lemurian period. These are all, it's a progression, and it's a growing development and a progression. And so each time it comes through again, it's like trying to clear off a little bit more of that filter, the filters that said that anchored it in that point in our growth and development as a people, as a race. And what we're trying to come more and more to, which is what I personally believe at least, is the law of one, which is that unity consciousness, that law that we all are one being, and we need to come into that oneness, right? So it just depends on where you're at in your growth, in your development. I don't think any one of the religions is wrong. It's just contextual, and it's cultural, and it's time, right? It's time sensitive. So we have to read these things with that awareness. So what I do when I'm reading a religious text of any sort, or really any text actually, is as I'm reading, I have that compass engaged. I have my compass mechanism engaged, and I'm listening and hearing and asking, is this a message that's appropriate for this time and space? Is this a human filter? For instance, in the Quran, there's a whole surah all about how women are supposed to be treated, right? And it says things like a daughter can't inherit all of her father's property. Let's say there's only a daughter left. She can't inherit 100% of her father's property. She can only inherit a percentage of it. If there's a son and a daughter left, the son gets a greater percentage, but he's responsible for the daughter. So there's all kinds of stuff like that in there. Do you think God gives a shit about that? No, of course he doesn't. But that's contextual, that's tribal, that's in order to ensure in the context of those people that they not only will receive the message, but they'll shift their thinking around it, right? And it's to change an older practice, which was the women got nothing. The women weren't cared for, right? Women were considered a property just as much as men. So these are steps in changing and shifting in the growth and the development. Now we're at that next step. That's why Mormonism was one of those things that came through. There was a channel, I do believe there was. But when they say it was the white salamander, this is just popping in my head, so I'm going to stream it. The white salamander, what is that? Like a white, like reptile? Well, if you look into any of the Corey Good stuff, the Draco rulers, oh my gosh, you guys, I'm sorry, I'm going there. It's a big white lizard, right? And that's an enslavement piece. So some of the Mormon church especially, they're very much about control. They're really strongly about taking from the people. Like, you have to tithe a certain amount of your, in all the religions there's a tithing, but in Mormonism, they actually get your tax documents and make sure you're tithing the percentage of your income. They track everybody. They track not just Mormons, but everybody's birth and death cycles. So there's a lot of control stuff there. So that tells you, oh, this information is coming in through some pretty strong filters. So Chris says, that's how I feel. My head injury made the time thing that we have a mess. I lost a month. I think I had a chance to relearn it, if that makes sense. Yeah, so when we have those kind of things, they really bring time into focus. You're not stepping on my toes. I was baptized as a child and didn't believe most of what I was taught. It just didn't feel right to me as a Mormon. Yeah. Lane, I'm not sure. No, there's no such thing as time. Time is you would ask that, is time real? No, time is a mechanism through which we can make sense of, in our monkey brain, in our linear existence of our experiences. That's it. It's an organization. It's just like in the library, when you want to search through the card catalog, you don't just randomly pick out things. It's organized in a time. You're going through the card catalog, looking from one to the next. When we watch a movie, it would make no sense if we took and scattered all the frames about and then just picked one up at a time. We put it into a progression in order for it to have an experience, make sense. So that's what time is for. And you can jump in and out of it the more you play with it. Okay, so Andrew, you must be one. I was feeling this type of comment on religious texts made me approach it more gently. What about tapping into the future? So I personally, Sandy, about future forecasting and future play, here's what I have found. Everything is possible in the future. It's about your choices. So when you do future forecasting, and as you guys play with this more and more, some of you are going to find that you can go into the future very easily. Personally, that's one of my gifts. I can see all kinds of futures. But as I look in the future, what I do, how I do that, is first of all, I don't. I already played that game. I went through the future. I tried looking at what's the stronger strand, what has most of the energy going towards it. And sometimes clients really want me to do future forecasting, and I always warn them, you cannot predict the future. You can to a degree, but it doesn't actually serve you to do so. There is a reason that we disconnect from that future so that we can have the full experience. But the truth is, every possibility exists. Every choice you make today, you made a different one in another strand. And so if you're doing future forecasting, you can very easily falsely manipulate your own timeline by playing in the future. I'm just going to give that as a warning. Now, there are certain things that come through as warnings to me, and they are about the future, and it's really strong, and I know that I have to listen to that. So I'm not going to tell you to completely disregard future forecasting or future looking or future work, but be careful about what you're doing with that. And if you're going through another person for that future forecasting or that future work or even the past work, recognize you're looking through their filters as well. You're not getting the information as clean through your own filters, which it'll always be, but now you've added another filtration layer onto that. Their value systems, their fears, their expectations, their desires, their needs, their unconsciousness, right? So future forecasting is a very tricky subject. And I don't recommend doing it, honestly. If you do it with a sense of play, with a sense of wonder, and not with a sense of intention, okay? Time is now easier to get your mind around, yeah. So Chris asks, you're full of info. Did you go to college, or is it life lessons combined with personal study? It's all of the above. So I did not graduate from university. I found actually that the university environment was extremely stultifying. I am an expansive thinker, so I like to explore things from many, many different disciplines, many different subjects, many different topics, and I don't believe in absolutes. And university is definitely about absolutes. So I wasn't successful in that route. I am an extensive learner. I am always learning. It's my greatest passion. I am always watching documentaries. I don't do as much of the learning because that is such an anchored in topic through this really tight, narrow perspective that you have to always filter through. So my guidance lets me know what books I can read and what I can't. One that I absolutely loved that helped me understand just our development and how we evolved was Guns, Germs, and Steel. That was a great book. But again, it was through a filter and through a perspective. So when you're trying to understand, and then the other place where most of my learning comes from is open channeling. When I start to read a subject or I start to watch something, I'll often tune completely out and I get this full download of information. The information comes through, I start questioning it, I start playing with it, I start talking to other people about it, I start seeking other resources about the information, I get confirmation or I get denial, right? Like I'm playing with it and I'm always learning. I never consider myself to be done with learning about any subject ever. So that's how I get my information. So that is why dreams don't make as much linear sense, but that also depends upon the type of dreaming state that you're in. There was an amazing documentary done about dreaming where they found that when somebody is, so they took a person and they had them in a dream state, and what they did was they were having them learn something new. It was a game where they used like a Nordic track skier, and they were supposed to be skiing through this scenario. So it was learning to control a game with something that was an unusual control mechanism, learning a whole different experience, and they had to kind of learn how to get through this path on the game. And then they would have them nap for a short nap, and then they would have them do full sleep, and then they'd evaluate how they did in the game. And they also connected them up and were monitoring what parts of the brain were being stimulated. And they found that we actually don't just dream in the REM state, we dream in each of the different states of sleep. We actually dream differently though. So in one state we dream in these pieces, these fragmented parts, and it's like the brain activity is all over the place. And then in another state of dreaming, it becomes a linear path. So in the fragmented state, it's pulling all this information, not just about what the person was experiencing, but what it's related to in all these different ways. And then in the linear expression, it pulled all these other experiences into that experience as well and created a story with them together. So our brain has lots of different ways of going through information, and that's a great example of it. Let's see. And they closely guarded information. Oh, so the Mormons closely guarded information, stopped going to church when she was 10, just couldn't do it. Free will creates, yes, exactly. Free will is always at play in your future. And this is why future forecasting isn't always necessarily going to work. Now, I have predicted many different things in the future, but many of them have not come true. And so my success rate around future forecasting prediction is about 70 to 80%. So I have a good inkling around it. So I'm speaking from experience, but I don't try and do it very much professionally. I think it gets us into some tricky sticky pickle situations. Jesse says, same here, that come to Jesus walk because I thought that I was what I was supposed to do, but then when I got there, yeah. A lot of us will have that experience with religions because the religious experience is Our experience with Source is unique, just like we're a unique division of Source. We come together because we're a unity consciousness. We're all parts of that Source, but we're all going to have our filter mechanisms. We're all going to be coming from this kind of strand of connection. So when we get into a place where somebody says, you have to do it this way, it should only be this way, you have to go through me, right? These are control mechanisms, and they're no longer about connection to Source anymore. They're about a control mechanism for people. All right, so we're kind of at the end of our day. That was a huge topic, a huge amount of information. We can continue this discussion in the group through chat and through conversation. I would love for you guys to continue having that conversation with each other. I will participate as I can. But that's what I had to share for today. It's interesting. We're talking about really big subjects, so it's hard to get meditation time in. So I'm sorry. Go back and do yesterday's meditation more. Oh, that's what it is. Go back and do yesterday's meditation some more. It's the last 10 minutes of the show. You can just jump right into that point. It's up on YouTube as well. And yeah, if you want to know more, Chris, play more, experience more, study more. Yeah. I study every day. I love it. It's my favorite thing to do. I don't tend to watch a lot of nonsense TV, but sometimes I do when I'm contemplating issues. But studying is fun. I love it. Okay, thank you very much, Elaine. I hope that kind of made more sense rather than less, and you guys get into play and exploring your timelines more. Love you. Mwah. Oh, have fun in class, Sue. See you guys later. And tomorrow we will play a little bit more with that and talk about more about other timelines, past lives and all of that kind of stuff. We'll play more on that. That's kind of the topic of this week. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.